I'm Seth Chandler. This is Analytic Methods for Lawyers, and this video is about using Wolfram language in the cloud. So, let's imagine it's a bright sunny day, and here I am happily computing away, and I decide, I'm going to close this down actually, bravely. I decide I really need to get to work on my Wolfram Cloud assignment. So I'm going to type Wolfram Cloud into my browser, and we now see basically the home landing page for my account. And I want to go to my files, and I happen to remember that I've stuck this file in Analytic Methods for Lawyers, or if I hadn't done that, actually I worked on this file quite recently, so I could click Recent. But let's just go directly to Analytic Methods for Lawyers, and you'll notice this basically works like a fairly typical file browser in a Windows or Mac or even a modern Linux operating system. So let's open that up. I see we've got course notebooks, a bunch of other stuff. I happen to remember that it's in course notebooks, and we'll now open up my nice notebook. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit more at the end of this talk about navigating in the Wolfram Cloud, but for now this is a very basic discussion of just how to do very basic things within the cloud format. So the first thing is, I actually think we might benefit from moving this up so you don't see some of the glop, and maybe also from magnifying the presentation. I suspect it's going to be a little small on the screen, so we'll move it on up to 150%, and I think that's going to be a more pleasant environment for you to look at. Okay, so we can do the same kind of computations that we do, oh my goodness, the same kind of computations that we do in the desktop product. So supposing I want to evaluate 2 plus 2, I just click anywhere in the cell, or I could click out here. We'll talk a little bit more about what's going on with that. See that funny little gear that appeared? But I'm just going to hit Shift-Enter, and after spending a lot of money, you learn that 2 plus 2 is 4. Okay? So you see the familiar ins and outs there. So that all works the same way it does on the desktop. If I wanted to get Wolfram Alpha input, you can start with equals, and I can say, what is the capital of Peru? Hit return, and it thinks a little bit, and it gives me the entity link. Supposing I've been working on my desktop version of Mathematica or Wolfram language, and I want to upload one of my notebooks that I've created there and work on it in the cloud. I can do that. I simply click on the cloud files little thing there, and you see that little up arrow? Up means upload, so I could click on upload, and it's then going to give me a menu, and I can do the usual thing of uploading it. Okay? So that's one thing I can do. Similarly, I can take any notebook like this that I've produced in the cloud, and I can bring it down to the cloud. Let's see. I believe that is done by file, and I could say open this file in Mathematica. That means the desktop version, or I could say download, and then I would just download the cloud version to my desktop. So that's where it would go if that was the most recent directory I had used. Okay? Now, use the gear. Let's look at that gear. Okay? So you see when I kind of move my mouse over to this side of the notebook, this little geary thing comes up. If I click on the gear, I learn all sorts of things I can do. I can evaluate the cell, which I've already done. I can cut it. I can copy it. I can copy it as various things. I can paste things in. I can convert it to one of these forms. We really haven't seen that in these lectures so far. So let's actually, let me just show you that. Solve x squared plus ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0 for x. And we get that That's one way of representing the output, but maybe I want it to look a little prettier, and so I now say convert to traditional form, and you see it looks a little more mathy. So sometimes when we want things to be particularly pretty, that's something that we can do. Let's go back to my gear icon up here. I can set it as an initialization cell. That means as soon as I open the notebook, it's going to evaluate, even though I haven't hit Shift-Enter yet. Sometimes that's useful. Supposing I had decided that, really, I would like this cell. Actually, we can't really do clear formatting until we've done formatting. So let's do formatting, and I think that the background for this cell is so interesting that it should be red. Okay, so now it's red. I don't really think that looks very good there, and so I've decided, you know what, let's just get rid of that formatting. So clear formatting does that. Supposing I think that I've put too much information in a cell, I could just put my cursor there, move over to the gear icon, that's now the insertion point. I can scroll down, and unfortunately it is past the recording window, but down there you'll see it's divide cell, and now the cell has divided. Oh, one more thing let me cover, which is, let me show you how to email a cell. Supposing I just don't understand what's going on here, I could click on the little gear. There's an option to email the cell, and then it's basically going to say to whom does it go, and it will set you up to email things. So those are some super basic things about navigating in the Wolfram Cloud window. So let's close down this formatting thing. We'll come back to it. We'll close down the file system here, and now we have a little more space to work in. All right, help! What do? You don't know how things work. You're confused. Okay, so let's first of all click on documentation. Right? And it's going to bring up something that looks somewhat similar to the desktop version. And supposing I think, well, it has something to do with this map command that the professor was talking about. And I think that he said it had something to do with functional programming. And there it is about map. And you can see it looks actually a lot like the desktop product. It's just sort of compressed here. And that's really because I'm forced to do this in a small video recording window. You could make it a lot bigger if you chose to, in fact, we can get something that looks really like the desktop version by clicking on this little thing here, which looks like it expands a window. And now you see we've got the full Wolfram Language Documentation Center. I could say map, and there it is. So we now have the same information that we would in the desktop setting. Okay. So that's documentation. Also, there are lots of tutorials. I might want to click on language intro. Here, let's shut down the documentation. Language intro, and there are 3 different forms of language intro. One's the fast intro for math students, one's the elementary introduction, one's the fast intro for programmers. Let's look at the elementary introduction, and we get a sort of a startup on the elementary introduction here, and maybe I'm interested in introducing functions. So we're going to learn about functions. You'll also notice links. If I click on quick links here, again, there's a whole bunch of stuff that's sort of in the Wolfram technology stack that perhaps would be interesting to me. Maybe I'm interested in a 1-minute video that would explain to me how things actually work. All right. Let's close that up. So, lots of helps available. All right, what else do we see in the Wolfram Cloud version? We have an evaluation menu, which we also have in the desktop product. I just haven't focused on it. And so it lets you do a bunch of things. One thing we haven't talked about is evaluation in place. Supposing, I want to generate some integers randomly, but I don't ever necessarily want to see that that's how it was done again. So what I could do is simply select it, and now I'm hitting Apple return on my keyboard, which I believe is command return on your PC. And what it's going to do is it's just going to replace that with its evaluated thing. And now no one's ever going to know that actually those numbers came from a random integer. Sometimes that's useful, sometimes not. By the way, how'd that come back? I hit Control Z or Apple Z just as I do on the desktop product. That's an undo. Doesn't always work. Sometimes you've gone too far, but usually it does. You can also, this is a very important command from the evaluation menu, see that thing, quit kernel? When things are blowing up and nothing's working and it's a bad day, just quit the kernel. And as I mentioned, Mathematica is a client-server architecture, so you'll basically be breaking the connection to the kernel. Your front end will still be here, but it won't remember anything that you assigned it. The kernel will have forgotten everything. Okay, so let's talk about other things in the front end. Plotting. Plots basically work the same way that they do in the desktop. So if I want to plot sine x, I just put my cursor anywhere over the code. I could, let's practice using the evaluate cell thing. And there it is. Didn't take very long. Just to prove to you that it works, I'm going to delete it. And here it's a little different. It says ready to cut. I say cut. And so it's gone. Now I say, hey, would you please evaluate this cell? And it does. Okay, so we can make 3D plots just as we do in the desktop version. Okay, there it is. And just as in the desktop version, we can rotate things around and say, ooh, what an interesting angle. All right. What else? I'm not showing you that much because most things work pretty much the same as they do on the desktop. Manipulate works. Here it's slightly different, and you may not be able to see it because this is a very simple manipulate, but it can be a little bit laggy. It's not sort of instant feedback. Let's see if we can watch this move. I'm moving my mouse, and you see how it kind of hesitated? There. Now it moves it. So it's not perfectly synchronous. This is one disadvantage of working in the cloud, as we'll talk about. There are many advantages. The Wolfram language entity framework should work well. So if I want to say, what is the tallest building in Japan? I can just say, what is the tallest building in Japan? And by the way, I just started this line with an equal. That's how I sort of got into this more Wolfram Alpha mode. I'm going to hit return, remember not shift return, and it's going to tell me, it's going to give me, hey, this is actually what you're asking. You're asking of the entity classes of buildings for which the country is Japan, compute the total height and take the largest. And one thing that's very nice actually about doing it this way is I can copy this to the clipboard. I can now paste it in, and I can say, you know what, I'd like to know what the 3 largest buildings are. And it's telling me, okay, that's what you mean. Let's execute that. Let's evaluate that cell. Right. Okay, this is me. This is not, I need to apply entity list to that to actually resolve it. This is like an abstract query, but it's not being active, and so apparently the Tokyo Skytree, the Tokyo Tower, and the Yokohama Landmark Tower are the largest buildings in Japan. All right, so let's actually get rid of this so that the notebook kind of looks like the way it did. Okay, have you noticed that I have not saved anything? And that's because in the cloud, it auto-saves. That's usually a good thing, meaning that, because when the programs crash, they figure out, oh, you haven't saved in 20 minutes. Now would be a good time to crash. But with working in the cloud, it auto-saves. You can revert to a backup. I am not sure how far back it goes. I haven't had occasion to practice with that. All right. Formatting. There is some flexibility with formatting, not as much as in the desktop product. But let's play with it. Let's select this cell and let's go to the formatting thing. So supposing I want the style of this cell to be like a section, and I want the font to be, I don't know, droid serif or something. And I want the font, you can see what this is. I don't have to go through it with you. And I want a frame around it, a big, thick frame. Okay. So now I've made this hideous, and now we're going to learn what remember I told you about clear formatting? So there we go. That cleared the formatting. Interestingly, it didn't restore the original cell style, so we'll go back and make this text the way it was. So that is formatting, and there's more things you can do. Insertions. Okay, there's an insertion menu. Supposing you want to get access to some funky characters, you can do that. Maybe I really love copyright signs, and so I can insert a copyright sign. How do I do that? Maybe I have to put that there, and I start typing. And by the way, watch this now, by the way. Okay, right now this is being input. I'm typing into an input cell. I could go to the formatting menu and say change the style to text, but just as in the desktop product, there are shortcuts. If I hit Apple 7, it changes it. And now I'm pretty sure if I hit the copyright sign, it will insert it at the insertion point. The reason it was balking before is I didn't have an insertion point. All right, so you can make all sorts of crazy characters. I don't really do this too much, but you could. All right, you can import images through a drag and drop, and we can also have hyperlinks to external material. So actually I've built one here, and if I click on it, okay, so there we go. UH receives major gift. Hooray. Let's unclick that and get back to where we were. All right, the view menu. And I'm basically just walking through what's up here so you understand what you can do in the clouds, in the cloud version. Cell groupings. We haven't really talked about that in the desktop product, but you can use it there too. Supposing I click on this and I now say close all subgroups. What it's going to do is say, well, this is all grouped. I just want to keep the header. Okay? And you'll notice now this little thingy bob appears. That lets me know there's more if I want it. If I click on it, it appears. Moreover, something that I'm actually using right now is you can make notebooks bigger or smaller in their appearance on the screen. I thought that having this at normal magnification would be an unpleasant viewing experience, and so I changed it to 150%. Here's what it would look like at 100%, and I think I made the right call. Let's go back and get it back to 150%. Okay, so all that's great. What doesn't work? Custom styles, fancy style sheets, really difficult to do in the cloud. A two-dimensional input, this is maybe the saddest thing that presently doesn't work so well. So remember I told you, if you want to make x squared, you can, of course, in the desktop do x caret 2. That'll work. But in the desktop version, I can do Command Shift 2. All right, supposing I'm done with this notebook, but I do want to find some other stuff that I've worked on. So let's actually at this point move my window down so you can see it. We don't need this window anymore. Let's close that up. We're done. So I'm going to close up this window. And here we are. Let's actually go back to the very beginning here. So this is basically what you're going to see when you enter the Wolfram Cloud. If you haven't logged in before, you're going to need to log in, and you're going to have to make decisions about whether that login is permanent or whether you need to log in each time. All right, but let's go to My Files. And essentially, this looks like a browser that you may be used to. And here are various folders that I have. And so Supposing I want to look at what I have for this course, you'll also notice we have recent, favorites, things I've shared, things other people have shared for me. We're not going to talk about deployments at the moment, and I bet most of you could figure out what the trash does. All right, so let's open up Analytic Methods for Lawyers, and you'll notice at this point I can do some fun things. I can say this is one of my favorites, and you know what? I'm going to favorite it because I use it all the time. So now it's favorited. I could rename it, not today. I could move it. Maybe I want to make it a subfolder of scholarship reviews. I could delete it. We're not pressing that. I could get details on it, and I'm going to learn things that really aren't particularly interesting today. Supposing someone needs the URL, like supposing I need to share this with a colleague and tell them, hey, here's how you can get access to my Analytic Methods for Lawyers stuff. So I could copy the URL to my clipboard and do whatever. But now let's double click it and go into it. And you'll see here are the files that I have, or the folders that I have. Let's go into course notebooks, and we'll see that these are various notebooks that exist for you to read. But let's do something a little different. And let's go back to Analytic Methods for Lawyers. Let's go to Drafts, and we're going to see that there's this draft here. Let's rename it, and we'll call it Legacy, because I don't think I ever used this, or I decided to do something with it. Anyway, and now I decide I want to promote it to be used in this course. So I'm going to say, let's move it. And it's going to say, but where do you want to move it to? And I say, I want to move it to the big time. I want it in course notebooks. And so we're going to click there. And I think I did it. Let's go back to course notebooks and see if that legacy thing is now there. And look, I got nervous for a moment. There it is. You can't quite see it because that Y got truncated, but if I mouse over it, see how it really is there. Okay, so I moved it. Let's move it back. That was a mistake. So let's go move, and we're going to put it in Analytic Methods for Lawyers, Drafts. All right. So back it went. And that's basically it. There's lots of other stuff we can do, like maybe I want to see these files as a list instead of a grid, or maybe I want to sort it according to, I don't know, the size. So the usual things that one can do in a file browser you can do within the cloud here. So this concludes the discussion of the Wolfram Cloud. I urge you to try it and see whether you like it better, or whether you like the desktop version better, or whether you like going back and forth. Just be careful if you do go back and forth to make sure that you don't overwrite things, by moving one to another, and things stay in sync. I will for what it's worth, I tend to use the desktop version. I've used it for a long time. And as long as I remember to save periodically before I do dangerous things, I find that works pretty well. But I can certainly see the advantages of the cloud, particularly in a sharing environment. Thanks.